Hey everybody, it's Sharon here from VidGamiac.com. Here we are today in Grounded 1.2.2, the Broodmother's Day update, going for the Creepy Crawler achievement. This is to defeat the new boss in the update in the form of the infected Broodmother. Now, first thing we have to do is go look for the recipe for her summon item. This one can be found in the mysterious lab underneath Castle Molderock. So make sure you head on over there. This is going to be in the northeast pond. If you don't remember, the lab is going to be at the bottom of the castle. Quickest way to get there is going to be through the mouth and then through the crack. You are going to take some fall damage if you do this too quickly, but that's going to be okay as long as you make it in here. Thankfully, there's not going to be a tough dungeon crawl or anything that you have to worry about. Just make your way down. You can either be careful about it or you can be more reckless. Doesn't matter as long as you make it to the bottom of the castle and then into the lab. So once you are in the lab, you're going to notice the 3 lab benches right here. Make sure you look on the middle one and you're going to find a piece of paper. Make sure you grab that. And then this one is going to be the Moldy Note, which is going to give you the recipe for the Moldy Hoagie. So make sure you pocket that, and then it's going to be on to crafting this new summon item. So the major ingredient you are going to need for this summon item is going to be Toenail. So make sure you equip a tier 3 hammer, and then we're going to hit up all of our Toenail spots. You're also going to need a lot of Toenail later for a specific weapon that we need to defeat the boss. So might as well try to hit up as many of them as you can. So the first best location to find Toenails is going to be the dirty ashtray. This is going to be located on the shed porch. Make sure you head up to the northern part of the yard and then take the bicycle up. Once you are on the porch of the shed, make sure you head over to the right side, go behind the lawn chair, and you should find this hose right here. If you hop on it and then follow it to the right, once it rounds the corner, you should be able to take it further up. Once you are on this corner right here, make sure you take a sharp left, jump onto this soda can, and that should allow you to get onto the baseball bat. Once you are there, you're going to take it all the way up, and this is going to put you at the armrest of the lawn chair. Then drop down onto the seat of the lawn chair, and then make sure you take that across. Be a little careful here. There are going to be a lot of ants up here that are going to swarm you if you're not too careful. But you're going to go to the opposite side and then take the ball peen hammer up to the opposite armrest, and then you're going to need to dandelion tuft your way over to the patio table. Once you are there, you should be able to hop over the pipe and then climb up onto the nail clipper and then hop into the ashtray. There should be 4 pieces of nail here. Hopefully the RNG is going to be in your favor and you do get some good drops, but nonetheless, you're going to want to try to grab as many as you can and then move on to the next location. Now, bare minimum, we are going to need 3 Toenail for the summon item. However, we are going to be making a weapon for the boss fight that requires 10. Unfortunately, in the current build of the game, there's only going to be 9 Toenail available in the yard at any given point. So just like any other landmark resources, you are going to have to wait for them to respawn once you exhaust all of them, and that's going to take about 2 in-game weeks. So be a little patient with this one if your game is exhausted. However, there's nothing stopping you from reusing Toenails that you have stored up, so make sure you do take advantage of those if you have them. So another 2 easy locations you can find at Toenails are going to be the border of the northeast and the north yard. This is going to be the exposed pipe right here. You want to be a little careful as it is going to be protected by a black ox beetle, but if you can manage to sneak past them, make sure you head on into the pipe, and there is going to be a Toenail right here where it bends towards the left, so make sure you mind that. Then finally, the last one I'm going to recommend is going to be on one of the overturned parts of the stump. You want to make sure you go to the bottommost one, which is going to be this one right here on the map. So look for this, and then make sure you climb on top of this and then grab it. These are going to be the 3 easiest locations that you can quickly grab Toenail from. However, do feel free to hit up the other spots, like underneath Castle Molderock in the Black Widow Den, or you can get the one that's going to be at the very top of the stump. Nonetheless, just try to grab as many as you can. Even if you do grab all of them, you are probably going to need a resource refresh, so make sure you do wait the in-game 2 weeks and then come back, and then just keep gathering up Toenail as we do need 13 pieces for what we're trying to do. So just make sure you try to get as many as you can, of course, and then hold on to them. But once you get the 3, you should be good for the summon item, and then the other 10 are going to be put towards that weapon that we are going to build later on. So on to baking the actual boss summon item. You are going to need 3 pieces of Toenail, which you should have plenty of. You are also going to need the drop items from the other 3 previous bosses. So you need 2 Broodmother fangs, you're also going to need the Orcus Mantis head, and then finally you're going to need the Wasp Queen head. Hopefully you still have those lying around somewhere, or you have them in a way where you can recycle them. If you use them to craft something useless, you are going to have to re-defeat those bosses and then get more. But nonetheless, once you do have all of the ingredients, make sure you hit up your local oven and make sure you cook the recipe. And then once you have the completed Moldy Hoagie, make sure you hold on to it until you are ready to start the boss fight. This boss fight is going to be very tough and is going to require a very specific build. You're going to want a minty weapon that is going to have a very high DPS to it. So the best candidate for this is going to be what we gathered up all of those extra toenails for, and that's going to be the weapon known as the Toenail Scimitar. This one is going to require the 10 pieces of toenail that hopefully you have the extra of. You're going to need 3 lint rope, which you get from spinning the lint you get from the shed carpet. You're also going to need 2 pupa hide, which you can get from cocoons from the undershed. And then finally, you're going to need 3 rust, which you can get from a bunch of areas. I'm going to recommend the toolbox or in the brawny box since there are going to be a ton there. Nonetheless, once you have those, make sure you get to crafting the weapon. Once you have the weapon in your pockets, you're definitely going to need to upgrade it in order to increase its damage output. So make sure you hit up the workbench and then make sure you start with the base upgrades, which are going to require the brittle whetstone. You're going to need 30 of them in order to get the weapon up to tier 5, which is the point right before you start putting elementals on it. So make sure you craft your 30 through either recipe. You can either do the quartzite method or you can do the natural resources method, which is going to require a bunch of sap and larva spike. Or you could do a combination of the two as long as you get 30 brittle whetstones. Once you have that, make sure you take it with you over to the smithing station and then make sure you drop the upgrades on the weapon. Make sure you upgrade this thing up to tier 5, and then once you hit tier 5, it's time to start putting elemental damage on it. So this is going to require that we need some minty globs. So that's obviously going to require a ton of mint shards. So make sure you hit up your favorite mint locations. There should be a ton of them, and it's going to be dependent on how exhausted your world is. So just feel free to strip mine your usual spots. Make sure you take advantage of the box by the spawn, the trash heap, the cup on the left side of the porch of the shed, as well as the western area of the north yard. Of course, if your world is going to be completely tapped out of resources, you are going to have to go berry treasure hunting, or you're going to have to wait the in-game 2 weeks for all of the landmark resources to refresh. Just make sure you take your time with this one, and then just grab as much mint as you can get. That is going to be back over to the workbench. We're going to need sturdy whetstone for this. So just like the other type of whetstone, feel free to do either recipe. You can either do quartzite, or you can do the natural resources method, which is going to be sap and spider fang. Make as many as you can, and then over to the oven to combine it with the mint shards in order to get the mint globs. You want to make as many as you can here. You can go as far into the upgrade tree as you want. Bare minimum, I'm going to recommend that you upgrade it another 2 tiers to get a tier 7 weapon, which is going to require 15 mint globs. So make sure you get to farming the resources you need for those. Nonetheless, once you have as many mint globs as you are willing to farm for, make sure you take these with you with the weapon over to the smithing station, and make sure you go for your next few upgrades. Again, bare minimum, I am going to recommend that you try to upgrade things to a minimum of tier 7. So tier 6 is going to require 5 minty globs, which is going to lock it down to the fresh elemental, and then another 10 is going to get this thing up to tier 7. Now, if you are a crazy person and want to upgrade things further to tiers 8 or 9, feel free to do so. This is going to require that you get mint jewels, which is going to require that you farm for twinkling shells, which is going to be a huge pain. So if you have the free time or the resources to do so, make sure you do make some more mint jewels, and then make sure you put those in to further upgrading. But again, bare minimum, you're going to need this thing at tier 7. So with that being said, this is going to be what your final loadout should look like. You need the Toenail Scimitar at tier 7 fresh element. I'm going to recommend that you have a shield in hand, as this is going to be a one-handed weapon, so might as well buff up your defense. Make sure you have a fully equipped set of armor, and then obviously you're going to need to have the spawn item, so make sure you have that. And then you are going to need a ton of healing items. I recommend the main 2. Obviously, you're going to want Liquid Rage and Fuzz on the Rocks. Feel free to modify those with Muscle Sprouts. If you have any Waspidotes left over from the previous update, recommend that as well. And then finally, for your perks, you're going to want Blade Master, Meat Shield, you're going to want Coup de Grace, and then I'm going to recommend Cardio Fan. And though finally, even though the boss is going to make it completely useless, we're going to run Mithridatism, so make sure you equip those, or whatever build suits your fancy. That's just going to be the build that I happen to run. And then once we have all of these, it's going to be on to the actual boss location. So to find where the boss fight is going to take place, you're going to want to head on over to the Haze Lab. For reference, this is going to be from the entrance to the lab. So you're going to want to turn to the right. You're going to notice a lantern right here. Make sure you go in this direction, and then directly behind this is going to be a hole that they added during this update. So what you want to do is want to make sure you drop into said hole. You want to make sure you are a little careful, as the outside bit is going to be surrounded by infected enemies, and you don't want them to damage you too badly, as we are going to start a boss fight real soon. So either sneak past them or take care of them and then bring your health back up. But nonetheless, you're going to want to head into this cave that's going to be very web-filled, just like the Broodmother den over in the hedge. You want to be very careful, as it is going to be lined with explosive plants. So again, make sure you don't let these take your health down too much. Just make your way to the end, and then once you are here, you're going to be in the boss room. So make sure you make a save here if you don't want to go back too far. But you're going to find where you need to drop the spawn item off in the upper left. So make sure you head that way, and then make sure you pop it in, and then get ready for the super tough boss fight. So hopefully you don't get too distracted by the boss's dramatic entrance. Make sure you throw your shield up as soon as you start to approach it. The boss's main gimmick and what makes the fight so tough is every time it lands a hit on you, it's going to give you a debuff, which is going to lower your health recovery. So with that in mind, your goal is to try to beat it as quickly as possible without it hitting you too much. So that's going to be a little tough. You definitely want to try to play more defensive right here, especially when it's being aggressive. Make sure you keep your shield up when it's trying to throw out its massive combo, and then try to get underneath it, and then just use your very high DPS weapon to slash it to death. So if you are wondering why we went with a fast DPS weapon over a heavy weapon like the Mint Mallet, for example, the reason for that is you don't want a weapon that's going to drain your stamina too quickly. The reason for that is if you have more downtime where you are trying to run away from the boss, if it lands extra hits on you, that is going to further add debuffs to you, which is going to make the later parts of the fight way harder. So definitely go high DPS on this one, and then having a one-handed weapon is also going to be more beneficial to your defensive gameplay, as you are able to equip and use a shield to block some of the attacks. Once you drain its health bar, it is going to go down, but then it's going to pick itself back up, and then you're going to start the second phase of the fight. It's going to be right here that I recommend that you start taking your smoothies, so make sure you try to buff yourself up and then heal whatever health you lost during the first phase. So make sure you open up your inventory, and then make sure you take the time to pick yourself up. Liquid Rage and Fuzz on the Rocks definitely helps out a bunch here, and then just get back to your strategy. Keep your guard up whenever trying to approach it, get underneath it, and then just use your high DPS in order to slash it from underneath. Obviously try to avoid its fangs, and you definitely want to try to avoid getting hit a ton of times. So make sure the number one attack you try to avoid is going to be its massive 5-hit combo. Just make sure you keep your shield up the whole time, and you should be able to withstand it. So in addition to its super annoying stackable health debuff, every time it attacks you, it's also going to put Venom on you. Venom is going to be exactly like poison, however, you can't use any poison resistance on it. So Mithridatism is going to be bypassed, as well as any other poison resistance that you may have. That being said, you should still be able to cure yourself of poison, so make sure you take those waspidotes that you have, and you should be able to remove whatever poison is going to be on you, and make sure you do so before it starts stacking up. So keep an eye out on your status conditions, and make sure you get back to the offense whenever you aren't healing. So just make sure you keep slashing away. Your goal is to try to finish the second phase as quickly as you can. That way you go into the next part of the fight, being able to get the most out of your healing items. Remember, the more times you are hit, the less your healing items are going to work later on. So make sure you do keep that in mind. The boss is also going to have new attacks during this second phase of the fight. It's going to jump up and then drop bombs on you. These bombs are not only going to damage you severely, it's also going to heal the boss. So make sure you are quick and keep the damage up before she starts healing too much. Whenever the boss jumps away from you, make sure you quickly get your back to the wall and then put your shield up at all times. And make sure you quickly figure out where the boss is coming from. Put your shield up. If she's jumping on top of you, make sure you put the shield on top of you. If she's charging in, make sure you keep the shield up in front of you. And just make sure you try to block as many attacks as you can. And then once you get a moment, make sure you get underneath her. And then just use that sword to slash her to death. Hopefully, you should be able to get through this second phase of the fight as quickly as possible. And without her landing too many hits on you. And that way we can go into the third phase of the boss fight without our healing items being essentially useless. So make sure you keep up on this. As you can see, as the fight goes on, you are going to need more and more healing items to recover your health, as those debuffs are not going to go away, they're just going to keep stacking. So make sure you try to avoid her hitting you at all costs. So just make sure you keep that shield up, especially when she's being over aggressive. If you're getting to a spot where she's spamming her jump attack, just make sure you get under her and then try to juggle her. And that's going to be a great way of landing attacks in on her underside, which is going to be a great safe spot. So just make sure you take this time to land massive damage. It's going to be more efficient if you can pin her up against the wall and then just keep juggling her. Once you get her to low health, she is going to be most vulnerable whenever she is doing her roar attack. The reason for that is she is trying to drop bombs down from the ceiling. This is definitely going to be the time to get underneath her, as you're going to have cover from the bombs, but you should also be able to outdamage her as she is healing. So whenever she is trying to heal herself, make sure you try to swing for dear life, and you should be able to outdamage her healing output, and that should be able to finish off the second phase of the fight a-okay. Once you do drain that second health bar, she is going to bring herself back to life again, and then we're going to get to the third phase of the fight. Hopefully at this point of the fight, the health debuffs haven't stacked too badly against you. Hopefully you are still under 10 health debuffs, and that way your health items aren't going to be completely worthless here. If not, hopefully you brought a ton of health items into the fight, as you are going to need several dozen to heal yourself. So on to the third phase of the fight. As you can see right here, she is going to start attacking more aggressively, and her health bar is going to be humongous. But that being said, she is only going to gain one notable attack in the form of the same attack that the infected wolf spider is going to use, which is going to be to pelt you with a ton of venom. For this, you can avoid it as long as you keep the fight close, so make sure you do keep that in mind. She can spawn minions, however, you aren't going to really notice them since they're going to pretty much die in the crossfire anyways. Don't worry too much about them, even though one may sneak up on you. You're probably going to be too focused on her anyways, but as long as you keep up with the same strategy, you should be able to defeat her. It's just going to take a very long time, as you can see with her huge health bar. So make sure you try to play aggressive, but also defensive, especially when she's throwing out those massive combos. Make sure you keep the shield up the whole time, and you should be able to block all 5 attacks of the combo. And then once you get through that, get underneath her, and then start slashing away. Make sure you get under her when she's dropping bombs on you, and then as long as you keep this up and are out hitting her, you should be good for this. Make sure you take advantage of your healing items, and hopefully you have a huge stockpile left. And if the poison is starting to get bad, make sure you do save your waspidotes for this last phase of the fight. Even though your poison resistance is going to be useless, being able to remove poison is going to be way more helpful, so make sure you do keep that in mind. And then other than that, it's just patience and then trying to get her in a good spot where you can juggle her. Remember, you are always going to want to keep this fight up close and dirty. The reason for that is if you let her get any distance and start using her projectile attacks, you are going to take a massive hit from that. So just make sure you try to stay under her the whole time and then keep that shield up whenever she is fighting back. Now, it's going to be very important that you have full health going into the last quarter of her health bar. The reason for this is even if you did a good job keeping up your defenses, since the fight has lasted so long, you are definitely going to start noticing the effect of all of those health debuffs stacking at this point. So make sure you don't rely too heavily on your health items here unless you have a ton of them in your inventory, but it's going to take about 100 to get the same effect as you would a single health item here. Hopefully you still have some waspidotes in your inventory, as the poison is going to get really bad with your health debuffs intact. So make sure you try to remove those whenever you can, and then just keep up on trying to be aggressive and finishing her off. But as you can see right here, the poison is going to be very bad this late into the fight. So waspidotes are going to be a big assurance that you can clear them as soon as you get hit with the poison, because those will drain your health bar way faster than her normal attacks can. But just keep pushing forward, make sure you keep clinching her against the wall, and then keep up on that aggressiveness, get her into the air, and then start juggling, and you should be able to swat her down. And once you knock her down for the 3rd time, she should finally stay down, and that should get you the achievement. 200 gamer score for this one. Hope you enjoyed the guide. And that's all there is to it.